Welcome to Revving Magazine. I'm Jason, and today I'm going to go through one of the ways in which I paint toy cars for wargaming purposes. So the car I'm going to use today is for Gaslands, but you could use it for any wargame, any sort of sized vehicle. For instance, I use a simpler technique to do this one, which is for Maximilian 34. So let's get on with the tutorial. So we have our car, which is Hot Wheels. This is going to be done for Gaslands. Now there are several ways you could repaint this or prep this up ready for Gaslands. You could literally take it as is, put some do some weathering on it, chuck some washes over it, and that would be fine. Another way is to remove all the paint, put it back to its bare metal, and even take it apart by remove these clips here, and then you would have to glue it back together again. What I'm going to do is, because I don't want these graphics on this car, plus I need, because this is quite a shiny surface, this paint, I'm going to sand it back and rough it up so that the paint will take to it a lot easier. Basically I just take a piece of sandpaper and we just basically rub that off as best we can. So by doing this, we scratch up this surface. I mean, if it goes back to the metal, that's fine. It means that the paint, when we come to paint it, it will adhere to it a lot better because it's got a surface. The surface is roughed up, and it should adhere and grip to the paint better than if we just left it shiny. So I know, and I want to remove these because I don't want that potentially showing through that graphic. So I'm just going to continue with this, and we'll come back with it when it's completed. So as you can see, I've scratched most of it off, and that should be fine. I'm not worried about this being scratched, so I'm going to paint over the glass anyway. Plus I'm also going to be sticking these kind of elements over this glass to get. So that is, the next part would be to attach the pieces that we want onto the vehicle. So the weapons, I need to remove this part and this part, and then these going to be placed over the wheels like this all around, and then I have this skull which I was probably thinking of putting on there. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these elements on, and I've got this part which I'm probably not sure if I stick on the back or on the top here, or I could go like that and then that up there. I haven't decided yet, but so that's the next phase, is to glue all the attachments you want on the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll come back when it's finished. So we've added the elements to the car now. All of these brass etchings were from a set by Games Workshop, 28mm scale. They work perfectly fine at this scale. The two weapons on the front come from Flames of War. They're 15mm. They work perfectly fine at this scale. So we're ready now, once all the glue is dried properly, to get on and undercoat it, and then start painting it. And these are some of the tools that I use. I use bog standard super glue, clippers, knife, and this tool came in quite useful to pushing these elements on so they didn't get stuck to my fingers, and for pushing down on these to make them stick down better. So next step, undercoating. Right, so we're on to the stage where we need to undercoat. The aim is to take this up to this. Obviously not the same colour, but painting wise. So that's one side. I'm going to use a brush undercoat, but you could use just as likely use a spray. I just don't have any spray at the moment, so I'm going to be using this particular undercoat from Army Painter. It's from the Game Master range, and it's just a straightforward grey undercoat. So I use a fairly large brush and just basically slap it on. I probably should have shaken it a bit more, it's a bit watery, but it's fine. It'll do for now. The purposes of this, obviously, if you're using a brush undercoat, I would shake it a bit more. So we just liberally paint that, chuck some paint on there. Obviously, if you're using a spray, you'll get a smoother finish. You won't get the brush strokes as like you do on with this method. I just don't have any spray left. And the weather is not exactly conducive to standing outside and spraying this morning. So I've given that a rough coat of paint. You can be a bit more precise with it and better coverage than this. I'm just whacking it on for the purpose of this tutorial. What I'm going to do is let that dry and give it probably another quick second coat. To be in all honesty, that's just quite a bit watery and so yeah, I'm going to let that dry, give it another coat before I start painting it. Right. Next step will be to start painting it. So we've painted the car up to this stage, and next I'm going to start painting these elements in metallic. and I'm using for this one the Iron Breaker by GW. I mean, you can use any metal paint, it doesn't really matter. Just deliberately paint that on there to give it some. Now they're not going to stay this way. I'm going to wash them down with a wash to darken them up, rather than leaving this metallic silver. Let's paint these elements in here, and let that dry, and then give them a wash. Now the next part I'm going to paint are this, and I'm going to paint it in Retributor armor. And then I'll dirty it down with washes and weathering. So I'm not being too delicate with the paint, I'm just slap it on because I'm going to dirty it up and make it look distressed and old. So we'll wait for those to dry. Those dried. So the next stage is to put some null oil over this area and some agrax. We'll start with the agrax first. I want to sort of dirty it and rust it down a bit before I start putting on the null oil after. Afterwards. So I'm just going to put some null oil, some agrax over this area. So just agrax over here, just to dirty that down, and then a bit over here. Then we're going to put some null oil over the gun barrels. So just liberally slap it on. So we'll just let that dry, and then once that's dried I'm going to go over this area and this area with the null oil. You could use any wash, dark wash for this. Don't need to use the Games Workshop ones. Right, wait for that to dry and I'll come back. So we've let that dry for a bit. I'm now going to put some Nuln oil over this area. I'm just going to be quite liberal with it, so I want to dull that down quite a bit, that area. And that around, that back bit. Just thin that excess off a bit. Just it's fine. I'll just make that back bit look a bit dirtier than planned. So we'll let all that dry. So next thing I'm going to do is put a wash over the vehicle, and I'm going to use a violet shade, purple shade, and it's basically just to get into the into these sorts of areas. And just paint that on. And it should work its way into all the nooks and crannies. Now I made a mistake here. I put some silver paint there. I've left it because I'm going to use that as a rust spot in a bit. So the side's done. Let's put some around here. On the top. And we'll basically allow that to dry, and I'll put some highlights and into the on the vehicle and tidy up before we start some weathering. Put some more along here to get a bit of colour, and so yeah, we'll let that dry and come back to it in a minute. So we'll let it to dry, and the first thing I'm going to do is start doing some rust on the vehicle. So I'm going to start with a brown, and so just going to paint in the areas where I want the rust to be. So I'll do some along here. Bits up here. And you basically put them anywhere you want, really. So I'll let those parts dry. And what I'm going to do now is the highlights, some highlighting. And for the highlighting, I'm going to use the original red. And then a small amount of orange. If I use something like white, it would go pink and wouldn't look right. So and some orange into the red to sort of brighten it up a bit. You see when I highlight, so that gives us our highlight colour. I've probably put a bit too much orange in here, to be honest, but it's fine. Just going to touch up some of all these areas. I'll get back over that door again. So the next thing I want to do is, I've noticed this area here which is quite light, well, silvery. I'm just going to paint that in with some dark grey. Then later on I shall then go over that and a wash over that just to darken that up a bit more. And then on the side windows I'll do the same. So next, the areas that I've gone over, I've painted in brown. I'm now going to dab on some orange. So work my way around the car, dabbing on the orange in there to give the rust effect. Just basically layer it up until it's looking quite rusty. Now, what we can do with these is to take a sort of greeny colour and create some verdigris. Just sort of spread that about a bit. So we got like that. So it gives it a bit of a colour in there and wear. So next I'm going to do is take some Nomen oil and drop that in there. Really trying to darken this front up significantly, and the back because it's a bit shiny for my liking. Not put too much on there. Add some more to the weapons. And then I'm going to basically whack some on the wheels here. My advice is if you can glue these so they stay still, I would do it. I mean, I should have done it myself. Because painting them is a bit of a pain while they're moving around. So we're going to start weathering, and I'm going to be using some of the weathering powders from Tamiya. These are quite nice sets. They come with a number of different effects. So on this, as you've got burnt blue, burnt red, and oil stain, which is actually that one. Wrong lid on wrong box. And they come with this. It's basically a makeup brush, sort of a makeup type brush with a brush end on one end and a sponge on the other. And you just basically run the brush over the powder area. It's very much like a makeup powder, and then just brush it on. And you do that until you get the desired effect. Oh, I've just broken one of the barrels by brushing too hard. I have to fix that. So I've added some weathering powder to darken and sort of dull it up, and I'm just going to touch up some areas with the highlight just up. So and just in a few areas to get that so it doesn't look completely dark.